Welcome everyone to the business meeting of the Canyons Board of Education. Today is July 9th, 2024. We're meeting at the district office located at 9361 South 300 East in Sandy, Utah. I'd like to excuse Mrs. Oakes tonight, and then Mrs. Tingy is on Zoom. And the first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda for tonight. Do I have a motion for that?
I move that we approve the agenda for July 9th, 2024.
Thank you. I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion to the motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Nancy, are you there?
Yes, aye.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you're with us. Okay, so that motion passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and that will be given by Jeff Haney, Director of Communications.
Please repeat the pledge with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Canyon Strong Employee Recognitions. And Jeff Haney, Director, and Kirsten Stewart, Associate Director of Communications, will present that.
Thank you, President Schill, for the time to recognize the faculty, staff, and students who help us keep Canyon strong. While schools are out for the summer, the achievements keep rolling on in for the Canyon School District. Now, today, members of the Board of Education and the administration join Canyon's teachers and principals at the third annual Show Up for Teachers Conference. It was held at the Mountain America Expo Center, and it's hosted by Utah's First Lady, Abby Cox. Now, throughout the day, teachers from across the Utah networked, listened to speakers, and learned ways to improve their teaching and mental health. East Midvale teacher Fatai Tufua and ISD's Emma Moss also were among the rockstar presenters at the conference this year. Now, here's a photo in our presentation about a bunch of CSD teachers and Dr. Robbins, Dr. Robinson, Mrs. Millerberg, Mrs. Neibauer, and Ms. Pedersen. That was at the start of the event today. It was fun to meet up with many of the Canyons district teachers and administrators who were there to enjoy the day with their fellow educators across the state. Now, our first honoree in the Canyon Strong Recognitions program tonight is Corner Canyon football coach Eric Kerr. Now, few coaches have dominated their sport quite like this year's Deseret News Male Coach of the Year. Now, the last school year was but a snapshot of the success as he led his team to a 13-1 record, a state championship, and number 13 national ranking in football. And over the past 6 years, he's led the Chargers to 4 state titles and an 87-7 record. Now, Coach Kerr's program also is known as the Quarterback Factory, and he's credited with developing some of the best quarterbacks Utah has ever produced, including some in the NFL and others playing for major college programs. So congratulations to Coach Kerr for being named the Male Coach of the Year by the Deseret News. This news came to us right at the end of the school year at the Utah High School Sports Awards ceremony. So congratulations to the coach. Our next honoree also got good news of his incredible achievement near the last day of school. He also was announced at the Utah High School Sports Awards ceremony as Mr. Lacrosse, and that's Brighton High's Mason Frey. Now, the Bengal goalie confounded teams all year with his massive frame and his quick reflexes. Now, in all, the Westminster commit had 192 saves and finished with a 3.9 goals against average as he led his team to the school's first ever state champion in 5A boys lacrosse. But perhaps it was his performance in the championship game that will be the biggest reason that he was selected not only as the MVP of the playoffs, but as Mr. Lacrosse. He was a pure defensive wall. Against Park City, he stopped 18 of 21 shots, and eventually the Bengals won 10-3. He's only the fourth Utah prep player to be named Mr. Lacrosse since the High School Activities Association sanctioned the sport. And like I said, he also was named the MVP of the entire playoffs. And congratulations to Mason. Now, our final honoree usually spends board meeting behind the scenes. But we are honoring her tonight for her 15 years of service to the Board of Education and Canyon School District. And that is our good friend, Catherine Myers. Catherine has provided catering for the board and district events since the founding of Canyon School District. And she's announced, much to our sadness, that she'll be among the Canyons family to retire this year. Now, she is hanging up her apron to spend more time with her family, travel the world, and enjoy life outside the kitchen. Our Tuesday night dinners during board meeting just won't be the same without Catherine, who never fails to delight us with her recipes. My personal favorite, the meatballs that we serve every year at the Teacher of the Year reception. Now, every meal she made, whether it was for 10 or 1,000 people, would taste as if love were an ingredient. Catherine's contributions to Canyons extend far past providing meals for district meetings and ceremonies. In fact, Catherine served as Corner Canyon High School's first ever PTSA president and worked hard behind the scenes to make sure that the school opened without a hitch. She helped support a support system. She helped establish a support system for the school's teachers, students, and administrators. She organized meals for parent-teacher conferences, breakfasts for the first day of school, and volunteered to do the jobs that no one realized really needed to be done to open up the high school. For her efforts, the Board of Education honored her with the 2014 Apex Award for Volunteer of the Year, the highest award the board and the administration gives to volunteers every year. As I prepared for tonight's recognitions, I was reminded of a Story People painting I once bought and framed for a friend. And it said this: there are things you do because they feel right. And these things might not make any sense or make any money, but it may be the real reason that we are all here, to love each other and to eat each other's food and to say that it was good. Thank you, Catherine, for all that you've done and for your place in the Canyons District history and for being a part of the Canyons family. Now, Catherine, Cindy made you some flowers, and we also pulled aside some of the gifts that we gave to our retirees. Since you are retiring as a member of the Canyons District family, you get a retiree gift just like everybody else. So would you please come forward and accept these gifts from the Canyons School District?
Thank you.
So Catherine, do you want to say anything? I know you hate this, but this is the last time you
That I
have
can
to
say something?
suffer us fools gladly.
No, I've been up here a few times. Thank you so much. You are family. And it has been my pleasure to serve you all of the years. You've made me feel a part of the team, and I'm not, but you've made that possible for me, and I appreciate it. when the school district began, it was so important to do it right. And I appreciate the opportunity to help do it right. So thank you so much. I will miss all of you. I think I'll still be around. But just, so if you have a potluck, I'd be happy to bring some food. But anyway, thank you so much. I love you all. Thank you for helping me to grow and to learn and to be my very best.
So the Halloween Day Souptacular in the Communications Department will expect a soup from Catherine. Now, Catherine, will miss you, but we wish you the very best, and please be safe in all of your travels. President Schill, thank you for this time to highlight those who make us Canyon strong. And of course, that does include Catherine Mears. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Haney. And just from the board, I'm going to allow them to say comments later, but I just want to add my thanks. And I want to say that the first time I met Catherine, I don't know if you remember this, but it's when I first met Nancy, and it was at the Sandy City Library. And it's when the split, we were talking about the district split and how to organize and support that. So she has been with our district from day one and supporting us, and you are family to us. So I do hope you'll come back. We'll miss you if you don't ever come back. Okay, thank you. We'll move on with the agenda, but thank you so much. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and I will now take a motion for that, and please read all the items.
I move that we approve the consent agenda with items A, approval of the minutes for June 18th, 2024. Item B, approval of hire and termination reports. Item C, approval of student overnight travel. Item D, approval of purchasing bids. And item E, approval of June financial reports.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or comments to that? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Okay, the next item on the agenda. Oh, sorry, I skipped patron comments, but there are no patron comments. Sorry, I just skipped it in my mind because we didn't have any, so we don't have any today. So we will go on to new business, and item A is school safety plan report, and Susan Edwards, public engagement coordinator, will present that to us.
Thank you, board and president. That was wholly unfair. Now that I'm a little weepy. I'm not upset about school safety, just so you know. So you all received a notebook tonight. And it has it, and I've done it a little differently than we have in the past. So some of you, we've always done your constituent schools so that you could read their school safety reports and then compare them year over year. This year, but because some of you say, well, I also have constituents here, or I want to see this school, I just gave them all to you, and you can choose which ones are in your areas and which one you want to read, or read every one of them if you're really bored and need, something to help put you to sleep at night. We don't publish these just so that our school's main concerns are not out there for the public, for anybody that might have anything nefarious to be concerned about. So you have those reports. I want to kind of point out to you how you read them. So this is a compilation of digital citizenship, school safety reports, and also safe walking routes. And what you'll note, each one is reported a little bit different as far as how different departments do it. So instructional supports kind of oversees digital citizenship. I oversee this school safety report and then safe walking routes. And since each report is done a little differently, what you see is slightly different. So try to read through them and digest. But what we do, so on the safety reports, every school community council with their administrator, their teachers, they're supposed to put in their main safety concern, the number one safety concern they have. And then they can list others too. So sometimes they'll list 2 or 3, right? So you'll see those listed, the number one concern. And then if they have other concerns, you'll see that too. We always respond back. We ask the principals and the SCCs, if they come up with an action plan and they say, this is something we can fix, then they will list that on the report and say, here's what we hope to do to remedy this or to address this. If it's something that only somebody in the district can fix, for instance, if it's something that is facilities related, then those reports will all go to the facilities department, to Leon, and to facilities. If it's something that is Brian related, thank you. If it's something that's Brian related, in Thrive Time, something in that area, then Brian will answer back and say, this is what we can do to help. And that's in the fall of the school year. And then the end of the year, we prompt them to say, have you answered this? Have you been able to do this or correct it? Some things you can't in any given year. You'll see sometimes one of the concerns is parking lot and the construction of the parking lot. Well, that goes on a master plan, right? And it may be a few years before we can address that. So it may be there for a little while. And we just, if it's not addressed, suggest that they keep honest, and it goes into the queue and we'll eventually get to it. Sometimes it's something that is easily addressed. So you'll see that as you read through, what the principal said they did, what the school did, what we've answered as directors. So you'll see that. Then digital citizenship's a little bit different. They are only supposed to reply. They get the digital citizenship plan that we produce as a district is sent to all school community councils. And then only if they have concerns do they note it, right? And then we address that. They can also invite our staff, either Scott McCombs or ISD or any of us, and have, right, Holly, we've sat through a few of those, to make a presentation and to explain how something works or to address something. So digital citizenship, you'll really only see if they had concerns. If not, they accept the report, say, good job, and move on. And then safe walking routes are a whole nother B. I'm going to skip to the second one. So the way safe walking routes work is these school community councils they review their safe walking routes. We are fortunate to have Mr. Rick Sheese in our IT department, who is a wizard at the GIS system. And he maps everything out. Then there's a physical description. They make sure those match. And then they see if there's any parts of their walking routes area that have changed. If sidewalks disappeared or something's changed in the route. And then they make suggestions back to the municipalities. We work with several. We work with each one of our cities, Sandy, Midvale, Cottonwood Heights, Draper. Then we work with Salt Lake County, UDOT, and then all of the surrounding police departments in those areas. We sit down in a big meeting here at the district. We go over each one, what the suggestions are for their areas, what the requests are. And then if it's on school district property, which you will see some that are, this is a district concern, we address it the same way. Can we fix it? Here's our recommendation. If it is out on a public street, then the cities and municipalities have to address, is this something we can address? And so we put that response in, get that back to the school community councils and the principals. And if the cities agree to address it, they then have to find it either in their budget or apply for grants to try to update that. And sometimes they'll just say, we can't do that at this time. That's what we report back to the school. But that's what you'll see. So that's a synopsis of all things safety. And if you have additional questions, you can ask me now. But if you have, if you read it, have additional questions, please feel free to ask, call and ask, and we'll make sure I can answer them.
Okay, board, are there any questions right now for Susan? Okay, well, thank you so much for compiling this. This is really great. I do enjoy reading it and just seeing what the concerns are and how most things are followed up on and worked on. So that's great. We appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item is item B, and this is a policy update. And it looks like Jeff Christensen is not here, but it looks like Mr. Wilcox is going to lead this discussion. Thank you.
welcome to an accountant's worst nightmare, where he has to try to impersonate an attorney. We share jokes back and forth, but this is just almost too surreal. Both Jeff and Dan have asked to be excused tonight. So they've asked me to go over the policy update. So there's two policies on the agenda, mainly regarding being conformative to state law that was just passed in this recent 2024 session. On the June 18th, we had a first reading on these two policies. Get to those in a moment. And a third one, which was extracurricular activities, a policy on that. We separated them out. And so that extracurricular one will come back after the policy committee reviews that. And that will come back sometime in August for a second reading and then possibly third reading after that. Okay, so it's just policy 400.02, non-discrimination, but the first one we'll get to is 500.02, which is student conduct and disciplinary process. Again, these are mainly to integrate or to comply with state laws. So some of the key ingredients in this one is an action plan, reintegration plans, sexual misconduct, threats against the school. I know that was a big one talked about at the legislature this past session, as well as making false reports of a school emergency, as that has somewhat been a problem with us and then other districts. So we've codified those into our student conduct disciplinary policy. Moving on to the non-discrimination policy, again, 400.02 and 500.01. A couple things here. One, it's a reorganization of this actual policy, as the text in the policy document shows. And then going down some of the new definitions to pursuant to Title IX regulations from the federal government. It should be noted those were to go in effect on August 1 nationwide. Utah, there's been a few other states have received an injunction. This last week, Utah received an injunction along with Kansas, Wyoming, and Alaska. So there's roughly 10 states or so that have applied for and received an injunction against that. But right now, that is still in the definition of that is still in the policy. A review panel, we'll get to that here in just a moment, on conducting investigations. And then the new review panel includes a review panel that includes the director and level employee of legal services and the assistant superintendent, Dr. Robinson. So they will, after it is initially reviewed, they will go ahead and do a second review to either uphold the investigation, request more information, reverse the determination of that of the investigation, or recommend different types of remedial measures or sanctions. And they'll do that within 5 school days. So again, I know that's a quick update. One of the things that Jeff asked me to note, and Nancy also may want to comment on this, as this was one of her ideas. She said that members of the members of the review panel shall not have prior participation in the investigation of the matter being reviewed. And we think that's very appropriate to try to keep these separated as best we can from the initial panel to the secondary review panel. Okay. So so they're not, so everybody has a clean, reviewing it with a clean slate. And there's also other policies that they recommend coming back on the consent agenda, such as student travel appeals, open enrollment appeals, sexual harassment, Title IX appeals, school moratorium appeals. There's other policies where this should apply as well. So it's our recommendation that Jeff note these and bring these back on, hopefully on that August 6th meeting, on the consent agenda with that. So with that being said, I know that's quick, but again, I don't feel like I can impersonate an attorney very long. I just doesn't feel right. With that being said, I'll open it up for questions. I may also defer to members of the policy committee for their input on this as well. So any questions or comments? And again, these would be a second reading possible action.
Okay, Mrs. Nybar.
I actually would like to make a motion. The motion would be, if there's no further discussion, or we can ask discussion to the motion. The motion would be to adopt this language into the non-discrimination policy and then go ahead and do the adjustment as Leon has described, which is specifically section 6, item 4. And it would read, the members of the review panel shall not have prior participation in the investigation of the matter being reviewed. And then my motion would include that that language also be added to all other applicable policies for the consent items on August 6th. So we did have some discussion as those of us who were on the policy committee by email with this. So that's the motion I'm making.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions, board, on that? Okay, I do want to comment on that. I do appreciate that because, yeah, I think that's important that we have that language in all of our policies when we have the panel. So I appreciate the policy committee working on that. Okay, so.
My mic may not be on. I apologize. Okay.
Okay, I think she's okay. Because she was going to text me if she had a comment, and I did not get one from her. So, okay, so I think if there's no other comments or questions, I will call for a vote. All in favor of the motion to accept these policies, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the Utah Fits All Scholarship discussion follow-up and possible action, and Superintendent Rick Robbins will guide this discussion.
Thank you, President Schill. First, just want to express my appreciation to Catherine. I think she left, but just thinking back through the pandemic, don't want to bring up any PTSD for any of us, but I just have to say during that time, I think there's something about really good food that just has a real calming effect on all of us. And I just remember certain meetings, just being so nervous and upset about everything going on. And you walk in there and Catherine's there to be the first to greet us and to really just kind of put our minds at ease and make us feel welcome and at home. So, yeah, she'll be missed, and just really appreciate her service. I don't think there's a greater example of a dedicated servant leader than Catherine. So we really appreciate all she's done for us. So I'm excited to have this conversation tonight about Utah Fits All Scholarship. It's really, this is a unique time, and I think it's one that we really want to give a lot of thought to. I mentioned to cabinet, I think in the end, whatever we decide to do, whatever the board's direction is with Utah Fits All Scholarship, will have long lasting effects and impact on the district. Quite frankly, I don't think in the first few years that probably going to have that much of an impact on the district, but we know that this is the direction that our legislature is going. We've opposed the Fits All Scholarship, so it does kind of put us in a little bit of an awkward position. But I think at the end of the day, the backdrop that we'll talk about is really one of choice, and we have been a district of choice from the outset. When the district was created, it was about really giving parents an option to do what's best for their students. So just with that, and I really appreciate Kirsten and Jeff's work on this, just a few data points to be thinking about. You can see there we really kind of taken on this mantra of no wrong door. And I really appreciate all of our staff, our schools, our our registrars, our administrators, counselors, teachers. I think everyone has really kind of taken up the culture a narrative and understanding that we're in a declining enrollment environment, the declining birth rate, the economy, cost of housing, that we have some challenges and we know that. And so thinking about, how can we combat that? How can we improve that? I think that is on all of our minds. It weighs heavy as we think about going forward in the district. So I think it's exciting to see, you can see we are a district of choice, as I mentioned. Many students from across the state want to come to Canyon School District, and within Canyons, our students and families have choice about what's best for their students' education. So as you know, we've agreed and applied and been accepted to participate as a provider in the Utah Fits All scholarship program. As far as I know right now, at our last state superintendent meeting up at Midway a couple of weeks ago, 16 districts out of the 41 are participating, and they're all at different levels. Some are all in, some are like us at this point. I think everyone's trying to decide, what this actually looks like, and we'll talk about some of the kind of the unknowns and concerns to put on your radar. I don't think tonight is the end of this discussion. I think this is something that it's new. It's going to take time, and we're going to have to adjust as we go to see, how we can best serve our students and also protect the interests of the district. I think there's a lot to these questions, but you can see from our last meeting up to this point, we are accepting applications for middle and high schools. I just want to point out too, if you remember the discussion, it's much more targeted in our secondary schools, right? We can measure it by course, we can measure it by time in a term or a semester or a full year. So it's very targeted, which makes it, or even with an extracurricular activity, it makes it very targeted and much easier to define, what that might look like for a homeschool student or a student in a private school, or a student in another system that wants to come take some of our courses. So you can see there, this is the way that's laid out up to this point. In our last meeting, we did not talk a lot about elementary and K-5, and I think that's the point for tonight's discussion. And you may make a decision tonight, or you may ask us to take this back to committee and bring it back. We are a little bit under a time constraint. Obviously, school's going to start, in another month or so. So we're going to have to make some decisions about K-5. But just some things to overarching. These are very, very high level, but to be thinking about what this might look like. In our last meeting, we've been processing this for a while. And I think it's very fair, and I'll just say, to be transparent, is that I can really argue this both ways. I think it's something that, could we and can we do and support the Utah Fits All in our elementary schools? Yes, it is possible. I think we have to be very, very thoughtful about what that looks like. We do have families that are in very unique situations that we have been serving that have qualified for the scholarship and have requested to come into the stay in the district, and we benefit from that, from the scholarship. However, I think there's also things that come with that you really got to think about and consider that could have a lasting negative impact on the other side of the equation. So you can kind of see a little bit about what that means for opportunities. We do, like I said, we do have families that are already being served in our district that are dual enrolled, that are homeschool, and they come to us part-time. Under the Utah Fits All scholarship, as you know, currently, if a family accepts Utah Fits All scholarship, then they cannot enroll in our school. If they want to stay enrolled in our school, then they have to decline the scholarship. And this is just my opinion. I think as this rolls out, my guess is that the legislature probably will take up that issue in the coming session. So we'll see where that goes. But it does put some of our families in a difficult position. But as far as the district goes, we're not removing any opportunity from any family. They can still come to us. We'll have many families that will homeschool and still enroll with us that are not accepting the scholarship or didn't apply for it. So that option is still there. But those families that have accepted the scholarship are in this situation in K-5. It does allow, if we were to go forward with a program, it would allow them to stay enrolled, and we would collect on the scholarship and invoice those families. And obviously, is it a benefit to the students? Yeah, it is, right? It gives them access to a world-class education that we provide. A few things that are a challenge with elementaries, and we touched on these in the last meeting, but I think it's important that the board really take this on and think this through as you're processing, what's the best route to take. One is, as mentioned, our elementary schools are not targeted, right? Those literacy blocks, math blocks, those can change by the day based on assemblies or whatever goes on. They're not locked in as tight as they are in secondary schools. And so when you start thinking about a parent or family that may be wanting, they want us to provide literacy instruction. I worry that a commitment on our side is, something that may be over promising and under delivering on if we can't lock in those times. And that makes it a little bit unfair to our teachers, and how they might go about trying to make that happen. So I think the fact that our elementary schedules are not fixed relative to our secondary schools is a little bit problematic. And then just thinking about, personalized targeted instruction for students. Many of these students we anticipate that would want to enroll under the scholarship, maybe only seeking the socialization part of school, and that's something that we would have to consider. Is it enrollment just for a block of time and not necessarily for something that's more targeted? But then you also start to take into consideration, what does that look like with breakfast and lunch, and when is drop off and pickup, and what does transportation look like? So there's a lot there to process. Class size is another concern that I have. As you know, over the last couple of years, we've seen a fluctuation in class sizes across different schools in the district. That's largely been impacted by permits from within the district and outside the district. So I do have some concern going forward. Like I said, I don't think we'll have much impact out of the chute, but as we go forward, I think, if we accept to do this and we plan to do this, that will increase. And considering some of the class sizes we have and the fluctuation that we have in the district, that may be problematic. And then lastly, right now, my understanding of the law is that we are not accountable for these federal and state accountability issues. So things like attendance or state testing, or a student with an IEP. Right now, my understanding is if they have a scholarship and they apply and we accept, that we're not subject to those rules. But as anything goes, as people start to really evaluate this and do analysis on it, I could see that changing. If you remember, during the pandemic, we did one model that we offered was parent-led, and there was a lot of questions about what did that mean. In the end, we were responsible for attendance and for testing for those students. Granted, most of those parents and families chose to opt out, which under the law they can do. But it did kind of call this into question about, how much accountability do I have? And so as students may take advantage of this and it's only part-time, what level of pressure and accountability does that put on the individual teacher, the school, and the district? So that's something else to think through. So that's a lot to process in a short time. I'll open it up for questions. I want to say too, before we go on, we've been really talking about this a lot in the last couple of days. If there's a way that I feel like we can address these concerns, and I do think there are some very innovative, maybe, it'd be a little bit new or a little bit innovative to the district and to our state, but I think there are some ways out there that we might be able to pull this together, but I definitely need more time to really get with cabinet and our team. July is kind of crazy, as you know, but we've been talking about some things that or models that might be able to address some of these concerns. So I'll throw that out to the board too.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent. I just want to remind the board, you did go over a lot of what we decided, but we also decided that the elementary school would go to a committee to be discussed. I just want to remind the board that that is what we decided at our last meeting. So, okay, Mrs. Nybar.
Okay, so just wanted to go over our last meeting. We didn't have all the information. The elementary school performance directors, Alice, Peck, and Sally were not there. Since then, I have met with them, and actually I met with superintendent as well, and assistant superintendent and business administrator Leon Wilcox looking at this issue. There's some things that we needed to bring to light that were not mentioned in the last meeting. First off, that we do have families that have been going to our elementary schools half day since COVID. They have been doing this, and the school, the DLI program at Altair, I believe, they have been accommodating them. And we actually, as a school district, have been getting a certain percentage of WPU, and it's been about 43%, which was $2,200 for those students, just like we accept funds for students that we educate. So these families are accustomed to doing this. These families have applied for their other children in middle school and high school. And we've, and because we're going ahead and saying, yes, we'll be a provider. So the problem is the way it works with Utah Fit Scholarship is it is a lottery system, and it is better if you continue to accept. If you are picked and you deny, it's harder to get it the next year. So currently we have 2 families, and we have 5 students between the 2 families who have been going to our elementary school since 2020 half-time. These families have been offered and accepted the Utah Fit Scholarship program, which is $8,000 per child. They're willing to give half, $4,000, if we can become a provider and do an invoice for their children to continue to do the DLI program. If, as a district, we decide not to do that, not only will those families, the option is they take the scholarship and they do not enroll in our school. I would think that in the future, that would mean that we probably have lost those families to our enrollment. There's other private school options, other things they could do instead, or their option would be to deny the scholarship and then try to keep doing what we're doing. But also then they would be recognizing there's a high likelihood that their family would not be recipients of the scholarship in the future. I do know, of course, homeschooling parents, they go to conferences, they have textbooks, they have their expenses as well. So I'm sure, these families are very interested in trying to make this work. When I discussed with Sally and Alice, who are not here at this meeting, they were less concerned about making this work for individual cases, and suggested that maybe it's something we could do by permit only, so that those that have been coming, we can go ahead and say, oh, grandfather in, yes, it's been working well with the school's aware. My concern is if we go ahead and don't do that for this year, there are families that will be missing out on having their kids be educated by us. I don't think that's best for those kids or those families, or really us either. If we're looking at doing this in the future, and I don't see why we wouldn't do this in the future, we'll probably most likely need to do this in the future. to help captivate as many of our kids that we can and help them have a great education by Canyons. I don't see the harm in doing an application only for this year, especially to grandfather in those families that have been going. I think that as we look to the future and we're concerned about overpromising, you know, Alice and actually Amber was there as well, Amber Landward Roderick. We talked about how beneficial it would be to do an informed consent and have the parents have an informed consent that they sign, because clearly we know that the elementary school schedule is much more fluid, right, than the middle school. Things aren't always taught at the same time, especially if there's an assembly or a field trip. But if parents sign an informed consent saying they know and agree to participate, although there is some situations like that, right? I think it's a lot about educating, and I think we can easily not overpromise if we're very clear what the expectation is and, you know, the schedule that we have to work within. So that's something we tossed around. Also, I think another big part of it that would be important, I think, moving forward in the future is the socialization piece, right? So if they're going regularly for a certain time period, and then if it's assembly schedule or something like that, and they may not that certain day get what they normally get, you know, there's also, of course, a lot of benefits to the socialization piece, which is a big part of why also parents choose to do that. So because we didn't have all of this information before, I think it's really important that we discuss this now, because as far as accountability to our constituents and our taxpayers, I hate to say we made a decision and we didn't have all the facts. So I think it's important that we have a good, healthy discussion about it now that we know, because last meeting, no one knew that families have been doing this, and we have been doing this half part time. So love to hear everyone else's thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Nybar. Are there other comments from board members? Mr. Edel?
So I'm not opposed to UFA and K through 5, but I am concerned about our students that we have there right now. And to your point, Holly, that we have parents who are doing this, I also wouldn't be opposed to just letting them continue to do it on the Utah Fits All, but that's picking and choosing our customers. And I don't think we can pick and choose our customers. So it's either open to everybody or it's not. And I think that's the big concern. But I would like to see us do it right and make sure that there's going to be no harm to the regular students that are enrolled. And so that's really my biggest concern, which is why I supported the concept of the committee, so that we can get the experts to identify how can we roll this out appropriately. And, you know, if we didn't have the need to accept all customers, I would say, great, like you've been here before, I'd love to continue to have you do what you do. But it's not that, it's saying, hey, whoever wants to participate in this gets to participate in this. Whereas right now, it's a onesie twosie deal that's been accomplished, which I just want to point out, like our schools have been really fantastic at working with parents for whatever their educational needs have been. And they've been really good at that for a really long time. And so I appreciate the flexibility that our principals have and working with parents and their unique needs. I mean, that's what public education is all about, right? Is providing the best education and working with all the stakeholders on that. But I do have a big concern. I want to make sure that we roll this out correctly, and I want to make sure that we're not negatively impacting our full-time students.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Tingy had a comment.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate this information, and I agree with Mr. Edel that it's great to have this information, but I really feel like it does need to be vetted a little bit more in a committee, as we talked about last time. And I feel like while I understand there's some individuals that are in a situation, it's hard for me to make a decision on whether it's policy or anything that's supposed to be district wide, but it's based on a few individual situations. I really feel like it would be helpful to study it out a little bit more, and we can do that in a timely manner. I don't know that we need to take all year to do it, but and this is the first time we've heard this information. I feel like we need to allow for some public comment, or, at least have further discussion on it before making a formal decision.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members want to comment? Mrs. Pedersen.
I agree that we shouldn't rush into something, but I do want to be able to work with those parents that have been with us. I don't want to necessarily alienate people who are obviously happy with what our district is doing and would like to continue with that. Is there, I know it's not specialized or grandfathered in or whatever, is there a way that we can have them be enrolled and then accept their money, their scholarship? There's the word I wanted. The scholarship a month or so into the year, that they could be tentative. And then I know that's a can of worms right there.
I mean, maybe that would occur the first month or two of school. I mean, I think we'd want to know that they're enrolled and they start, and then we would invoice. That's how they'll get paid.
I think that would possibly meet the needs. Based on just one exceptional situation that I would like to work with. I do. Those challenges are still the same challenges. I like the idea of having them sign an agreement, disclosure statement. Perfect. Especially in this case, saying we're working on a means to be able to accept the scholarships, but it has not been vetted with our district leaders. And then maybe we could, roll that out. And I don't know if they have to be accepted. All of the things have to be accepted by a school by a certain time.
Well, I think
I'm just wondering about that part.
Part of the challenge is, and I don't know, Leon, if you've looked, but I'm not sure when the date for acceptance of the scholarship is, but I think that's pressure that our families are under, that there's a date they have to accept by or not. And as Holly pointed out, if they decline, it's going to be much more difficult to apply and get the scholarship back. So that may put some pressure on us to make a decision sooner than.
Well, that's going to be
later,
before school starts. It'd have to be.
I don't know for sure, so I don't want to speak, but I think it's around end of this month, end of July.
I was going to say it'd be very, very close.
Except,
Okay,
So
any other? Oh, sorry.
I'm just saying I support this additional information is very helpful, and I think it's very useful for us to know, but I don't want to rush into saying, okay, anybody who wants to come to our elementary schools can do that without really looking at all the ramifications. We haven't really looked or addressed it with.
One comment too,
principles.
just as you're talking and I'm thinking this through, I think to Andrew's point, I'm, this is new territory. I mean, when you really think about the intent, it's interesting to me in the irony that the intent of Utah Fits All was to give parents choice really to opt out of public schools. And here we are, and they're opting in. And so if that's not a message to our legislature about choice, the majority want to stay in our schools. It's just, this is a very complex thing. We've never been in a position. It's always been, it's true. We have, had many families that have been part-time, full-time, dual enrolled, split enrolled. and we worked it out and it's prorated in the formula under WPU. This is new territory. In all transparency, I do think it has some implications with fairness and equity. I mean, do any of us know how families are chosen to get the scholarship, or who has access or doesn't has access? I mean, I believe it's based on some type of fiscal formula, but even at that, I mean, and so now we're going to enter into a competitive environment where before it has been we serve all, but now we're in this different space. And so I'm just trying to process how we can accomplish that and still be open and fair to everybody.
And I'm also worried that homeschooling parents are usually very strong in the values and the items that they want taught. And I don't want them picking and choosing. I like this part, but I don't like this part. And I don't know if that will help with the unity of a school, or if it could cause dissension within a school. Are they going to assume that because they're paying extra, because they still pay taxes, that they're now going to also pay? Of course, the money they got was from our taxes, so that's moot.
It's a very strange.
That they feel like their student
World.
needs more
Yeah.
attention. Probably big. We're thinking worst case scenarios, obviously. What could it be like? And it may not be that big a deal, but it is something that I hate to see us say no to, because again, just like the parents, if we turn down you accepting this money, we won't get that opportunity to get it back as easily either.
Yeah.
So this is our opportunity to say, yeah, we agree in parents' choice and that we're going to promote that. And we may have to for this first year, it's just going to have to say, here's our list of things you have to acknowledge that we will not be able to do. And that's just for this year until we have a solid. I think that everyone would understand that, parents would understand that. Yes, we're accepting you, and it could be open to anyone, but it's on a kind of a trial basis. Does that make sense? The rules for this year may or may not be the same rules for next year, but that we can allow it within these parameters for now, so that we don't lose that opportunity. Because I really think in the Salt Lake Valley that if we don't work with them, they'll turn it against us. Does that make sense? If we're participating in the Fits All scholarship, then we have an opportunity to inform it because we're participating with it. And if we're against it, they won't listen. So I'm concerned about that.
I don't
too.
remember this particular issue being discussed in the session, so I don't know how aware our legislature actually is. And my guess is that as we're not the only district that's faced with this, is that as this issue comes up, it likely will be something the legislature takes up anyway. So like you said, it may be a moot point in the end, so.
Okay, so I'd like to make some comments, and then some other board members want to speak again. So I agree with Andrew. Like, I'm not opposed to us doing this, but I want to make sure we do it right and that we open it up to everyone, that it's fair. I mean, we also have to remember that I just don't want this a burden on teachers. I mean, we just went through that whole year-long process trying to give them more time. And then if we're going to be adding students here and there, and they're coming only part of the time, I mean, that's just going to cause teachers a lot of stress. So I just want to make sure that we take time, that possibly there's like a rubric created, like how are we going to, where do we have space? Because we do have schools with declining enrollment and lower enrollment. And so maybe that's great. Maybe they can go there. But I just think I agree with our decision before, just to send it to committee and for them to study it. And, I have a lot of confidence that we can possibly come up with something really innovative in a way that we can do this and that it will work. But I don't want to just rush into it. So, okay, Mrs. Nybar wanted to comment again.
Thank you. So I have some concerns. We say we don't want to negatively impact the school community, but the reality is those kids have been part of the school community at that elementary school. So by us choosing no action, we are negatively impacting that school because those kids have been going there for the last 4 years. So that's something we need to acknowledge. Secondly, we can't do something halfway through the school year. If you're a homeschooler, you sign an affidavit and it has to happen before the school starts. So if we do not do anything before school starts, let me be clear, we will lose those students and they will not be able to participate in our school. So I also just want to reiterate some of these kids, like there's two of the kids that are fifth graders. So if they don't accept the scholarship and say, okay, we want to come to your school half year, there's a good chance next year they don't get the lottery, which is first by income based, but they may not get it. And then that means that we wouldn't be able to accept the funds for the next year. So there's a little more complication to this than what it looks like. I want us to be clear, in a year where we are raising taxes, we are saying right now as a board that we would rather not accept the funds. And when we have enrollment that is down in our elementary schools, and actually shut out students who have been going. So that is my concern. I'm not trying to make an exception just for a few. When we talk about doing an application basis, when you look at the application through the state to become a provider, there are no exclusions. In fact, it's a little scary. There isn't very much accountability at all, which is a problem. But we could apply and be providers and say, we have a lot to figure out. I agree with all of you. I don't want to do anything haphazard. We have a lot to figure out. But when there's a lot of different things we do all the time where we say, we're going to pilot this, couldn't we pilot it and say, we're going to accept 15 applications, or even look and say, let's look at our school records. How many kids have been doing this? How many homeschool kids have been in our schools the last 3 or 4 years, part-time? Okay, there's 20 of them. Can we do application only just for 20 this first year? So that they can kind of continue and we're not closing the door to anyone, which I believe is negatively impacting that school community. They do have peers that are used to having those kids there. That school is used to having those kids there. We are used to having those kids' test scores there too. So I think there's more that plays into this. So I'm not sure why we wouldn't do application basis only, cap it at 20, do a quick research and find out how many kids have been coming. Because I just hate to turn these kids away that are part of our, like these kids, they're part of our DLI program that is also a lottery. So we've been educating them for 4 years in this language, and that really negatively impacts that family and those kids, I believe, if we say, no, not this year while we figure it out. So I want to figure it out, but I just don't know why we couldn't do something like application basis only, pilot, and just have a certain number. Because it doesn't seem right to kind of shutter our doors to those kids.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Tingy?
Thank you. This is a tough situation, and I can see how, and I'm assuming that if these 5 students that are being referred to are all part of the DLI program, which has a more natural division of the day than other general ed programs. I just think that we need to take some time and explore all options, because I don't feel like we would even be, because first of all, we'd have to apply to be a provider for elementary. And I don't know that if we apply in a limited fashion that we would be authorized to do that. And, I just don't know. There's just a whole lot of unknown questions. I feel like we can vet this out, relatively quickly, but I'm just not ready to do that right now, because I feel like there's still so many unknowns.
Okay, thank you. So board, unless anyone wants to say anything else, this is, we did list it as possible action. So I don't know if there's someone who wants to make a motion, or if we just go with our previous decision to send it to a committee. Anyway, I'll entertain a motion if we have one.
Last question. So if we're sending it to committee, but we're saying it can happen in a timely fashion, which some of you are in favor of, can we please be clear for the public that are listening to this. Does that mean that this will not be an option for those families for this next fall? What does timely? I think we need to be specific.
Yeah, so Superintendent, which committee, because I don't know if we decided, we were kind of going back and forth last meeting between high quality and operations. So what committee do you recommend? And then I'm just whenever, I can see when that committee's
Yeah.
meeting next. and
So I
try to
mean,
talk
when you
about it.
look at, to me, when you look at the issues that we're talking about, I mean, it could be held in both committees. In my mind, operations, it probably fits more of this because we're talking about class size, we're talking about enrollment. We're talking less about instruction and more about just how do we make it operational, right? How do we make it happen? But you know, that the board can direct us.
Okay, I mean, I personally think that makes sense. I don't know about the rest of you guys. Do you know who is on operations and when is your next meeting? Are you meeting in
Here's our
July?
esteemed leader right here.
Thank you.
Don't know how esteemed, but no, we could always call a special meeting, of course.
Okay.
Our next meeting isn't actually until towards the end of August after school starts.
Oh,
So
after
we've
school starts.
been meeting monthly, had one at the end of June. We'll not have one in July just because it's so hard to get schedules going. And then we're looking at August 22nd, I believe, the next meeting, yeah. And we could
Okay.
easily call one. and
You could
see,
call one
yeah.
to discuss
It does say, I'm looking at, and just another follow-up, I'm looking at the Fits All Scholarship website. Applications were due on the April 22nd. Awards were notified on May 3rd. It doesn't give a timeline when they have to, whether they will accept the award, but it says their accounts will be funded on August 7th. So I'm
Okay.
kind of thinking that's when,
Yeah, they have to decide. What about, is there a deadline for our district to apply?
no,
Mhm.
I think our district could become a provider at any time. Pretty
That's
quick.
fast, okay.
I don't, yeah. I don't, as far as I know, I don't know, very few, if any, have been turned down. I think you just fill out the application and you're pretty much in, so that wouldn't be too big of a issue. I think we could just amend the one we have out there.
Okay. Mrs. Tingy has another comment.
Yes, thank you. I don't know if there is, like Mr. Wilcox was saying, a time deadline for them to accept the scholarship, but I can't see any reason why they couldn't accept it, but then just maybe not start purchasing our services until we get this all officially and figured out. It may be a week or two, and I realize that's some uncertainty, but I feel like the board's been pretty clear with intent that we want to figure it out. And right now we're just dealing with a timing matter. And another comment, I'm on the operations committee, and I would welcome an additional meeting to have the committee vet this out and talk about it. And if we came back with something to the board on the August 6th meeting, I feel like that's a reasonable time frame considering the circumstances.
Okay, thank you. So operation, who else is on operations? Okay, Chris. Amanda's out of town. So is the operations committee willing to meet?
Absolutely.
Couple weeks?
I got several of them here right now shaking their heads.
Okay.
Absolutely. We'll meet, yeah.
I know July is tough with vacations, but okay.
We we'll meet. I think Nancy's point right on. We will certainly meet. It is tough to schedule, but we certainly will meet before that August 6th meeting, looking at either the week of, either the next 3 weeks, and then have a report back to the board on
August 6th.
August 6th.
This is our next board meeting. Mrs. Millerberg?
I did feel when I read the application and the scholarship that there were some open questions about it. For one thing, I couldn't see a reason why we couldn't maybe accept that we would participate in it, but set stipulations based on our district. Like, I don't know why we would not want to grandfather in the students that are already there. I don't think that we need to think of pitting parents against teachers. I think we need to look at it as though they want to work together. And I would doubt very seriously that if you were to approach any of those teachers, that they would say that they didn't want those students to come. So the law is or the program is encumbering something that to me doesn't exist in anything other than the wording of the statement. So to me, we need to put it back on them to identify that, accept it, but establish our own rules for how our students are going to participate in that. And I didn't see anything in that that said we couldn't do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, Chris. I think that is a question. I think for me, just thinking big picture, like I said, this year, we're talking about 5
Yes.
students. We're probably talking about a few more, but I think we have to be cognizant that we have many homeschool parents out there, to Karen's point, that will watch this closely, that will decide, hey, maybe it's tougher than we thought to
Yep.
teach kids how to read before 3rd grade. So here's a way for us to target those services and those needs. And that's a different discussion than what we're talking about with the kids that we
Yes.
currently serve. So
I agree.
I don't think the legislature even processed all
I
of this.
think that we have thought and considered it much more deeply
Yeah.
from a personal perspective of the students that are involved than they have.
Yeah.
I think they rolled out a program thinking, let's cooperate, let's bring people in, but they didn't look at
The
exactly
details.
all the details of how that has to happen. I probably would, I don't know if I would dissent, but I don't know that I would open the door and add any extras coming in. I would grandfather in the students that are here
Yeah, okay.
and own it the way that they've written it. So we follow their stipulations, rules, timing, application for all of the finances to go to and from, so that you don't get into anything where we're restricting ourselves or going against what they've established, but leave it to see as we weigh it out.
So just for clarification, I think what I'm hearing from you all, and tell me collectively, President, you can tell me, but summarize this. But I think thinking about the students that we have, right? Because there may be more families that are in this very situation that just don't know this yet. That's something that we look at if indeed we send it back to committee, and that's what you want us to do. One of the things that we would look at is, can we, in our framework, draw that up, that those students that are in this situation are grandfathered in under Utah fits all, and then we can make decisions about how it expands or
Goes
not,
forward.
but we try to address those that are in already first. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think so, but Mr. Edel wanted to comment and then I can comment.
Chris, you jiggled something out of my head, so I appreciate that. Because I've been looking at this obviously from the lens of public education, and something you said, I don't know what it was, but jiggled the fact that private schools don't care about equality. And they can do whatever they want, and they can accept or deny whoever they want. And so, like, if we're a private school in this matter, then I guess so could we. And so looking at it from that lens, which is a really different view than our normal one, it stands to reason that it should be reasonable enough to accept the students who are currently doing some type of modified schedule with us, and allow them to be accepted and basically shut it off for all others until it's thoroughly vetted.
So I would agree with that, but I would take it one step further because I would just say DLI because we know DLI is already working. Like, I don't know about other modified schedules, but I would be okay with the students who are already attending, specifically DLI, but that's just my,
Are there any others?
I don't know. We don't know yet, but that's the thing. Maybe the committee can look at that.
I just don't think right now.
Uh-huh.
Once they realize, oh, hey, we have qualified for the scholarship, and they figure out that they can't enroll if they accept it, we're gonna get more and more of these calls. So DLI is its own animal, but it is much more targeted like secondary, so that does make more sense. But I think there's gonna be a group of parents that once they start to realize this, oh, we're on scholarship, we apply, we get the scholarship, oh, wait, now we can't enroll because that's what's out there. Like, I think we have to, we're just on a new planet. I mean, this is new territory for us to work through, but I think we can work through a lot of those details, and I think we can get it back to you in a real timely manner so you can make a decision.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Tingy has a comment.
Oh, thanks. No, I appreciate that summary and this concept of whether we grandfather in or do DLI only. I just really feel like tonight's not the night to be making those decisions. I think it is going to be helpful to have a committee vet through everything and present an actual proposal that has been thought through. And because if we kind of just take a leap like this and figure it out as we go along, in my experience, that seldom works out well. I really think we're better off if we just take another couple of weeks. And those families that are concerned and listening in, I think that they should be able to feel that it is our intent to figure something out, and we're going to do that as soon as possible. So that's just my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Edel?
I'm going to move that we open Utah Fits All scholarships for K through 5 with the contingent that it will only be that the only eligible applicants will have been enrolled in a modified schedule during the 2023-2024 school year.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Okay, Mrs. Millerberg seconded. Are there any comments to that motion? Okay. Okay, seeing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Nay. So Nancy and I both said no. And
Wait, what did we say? School year, right? 2020.
yeah, so 4-2, sorry.
From last year.
That motion passes then with a majority that voted yes. So, Andrew, could you, I don't know, do you have that typed up somewhere? You could maybe send that to Cindy.
So I'm just thinking timeline. So we'll get the application in ASAP, like tomorrow, as soon as I'm not sure who's around or not, but we'll get that in as soon as we can with that language that for this next year, we would accept Utah Fits All scholarship for those students that were previously enrolled in Canyon School District the year before
Last year.
K-5.
Yeah.
Okay. And then maybe we still get together
I think,
on
yes,
operations.
operations still needs to get.
Because I do think, there's all these contingencies and other students that are on the peripheral. We could come back on the 6th with some other ideas or things, but I think with what you've given us, we got some traction. We can go forward with that.
Okay, and then can you bring us numbers, like more detail on, because we have.
Yeah,
no idea how many
and I-
students that is that we just,
Kirsten,
okay.
we've been trying to pull a lot of that data. It's hard to, we can identify those students, but it's difficult to understand how much they're enrolled or how little, or I don't know. What, you want to comment to that, Kirsten, or? But we're working on that. We know this is something we gotta, going forward now that we're in this space, this is data that's gonna be important in making these decisions.
I think it's data that we can get our arms around, but it's gonna take a little bit of digging. So right now, if we were gonna do draw on Skyward, how many students are dual enrolled, it will just show us how many students spend X percentage of their time in Canyons, but that could be a student who's on an education release, or it could be a student who's spent half the year here and then moved and attended elsewhere. So it'll just take some digging. We can do it. It'll take a little bit of time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think that, I mean, that ends our discussion,
We're
right?
good.
You know
Okay.
where we're going, Superintendent?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So the next item on our agenda is staff comments, and we'll start with the superintendent.
Wow, get it here.
You barely made it.
Everybody hold your breath. All right. I need a drink of Diet Coke. No, just real quick, big shout out to First Lady Abby Cox and Show Up for Teachers today. And we have upwards of 200 teachers every year that participate, and it's just great to see all the support. And I think just to take to heart the message in the conference about connection, and really trying to break down the barriers of isolation. I think that's something that we see and hear all throughout the school year with all of our employees and our families and students. And I think everybody's dealing with so much, and it's just great to be at a place where there's so many people dedicated to our cause. I want to mention too, if you were in the opening session and listened to Governor Cox, he talked a little bit about, and I haven't read it yet, a recent ranking by Forbes. They had a formula, lots of different data across different spectrums to measure school success. And interestingly, Utah came in number 2 to Massachusetts. So we're right alongside Vermont, Rhode Island. I can't remember all the states that were mentioned, but Utah came in at number 2. So when you think about the bang for the buck and the investment, can we do more? Absolutely. And should we expect more? Yes. But I think it's important to celebrate the wins along the way too. So I thought that was great that he shared that with all those educators and people that were in the room today. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to start, Business Administrator, Mr. Wilcox next.
Just big shout out to Catherine Myers. Again, we recognized her today, but she's been a dear friend for some 15 years, and just wish her the best of luck and hope everyone's enjoying their summer. Stay cool out there. Thanks. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Nybar.
I too wanted to thank Kathy. You think about all the traditions of breaking bread with people, and I think it's definitely helped us in our meetings and as a board, right? And just the friendship that's gained as you eat together, and that she does prepare it with such love, and so great to have a nice homemade nutritious meal. But also, I really appreciate that discussion tonight, and regarding these kids that have been going to our schools and are part of our school community. And I think that, that's just the big goal, is that we are welcoming, and that we're doing our best to make Utah better by educating our kids and having open arms with enrollment and doing all we can. And so I'm grateful for that discussion and for accommodating those kids that we have been educating. So I think that's it. I'm going to keep it brief tonight. Thanks. This is our short meeting, right, Amber?
Yes. Thank you so much. Okay, Mr. Edo.
I want to say thank you to Catherine. I think she downplays her level of importance a lot. Catherine, I think, has been the biggest impact in making meetings civil and productive. She'll be missed. In addition to just being an absolutely fantastic person. You can't help but to be happy once you encounter Catherine. And then you can't help but to just be in the best mood ever after eating Catherine's food. So special thank you to her. I hope that someone tells her to listen to at least a few of the comments at the end of this, because I'm sure she's not watching right now. Then I've been enjoying the summer, and I'm looking forward to all the great things we're going to do again starting in the fall.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Millerberg.
So I spent the day today at the conference, and it was a really great, fun environment to be in. And there were just a couple of takeaways. First of all, what superintendent pointed out that the governor brought up. I did look up the article and read it specifically, and it was specifically directed toward teachers. It was a Forbes article, and it stated, many U.S. states are facing severe teacher shortages, creating ample opportunity for professionals in this field, but earning potential, cost of living, and work environments for teachers vary drastically from place to place. If you plan to become a teacher but aren't sure where you want to work, we can help. On this page, Forbes advisors used data from National Education Association, and it listed several others, and then they ranked them. And like the superintendent stated, Massachusetts was first and Utah was second. So this was about the teachers. It's the place where teachers want to come. And I feel like our district has created that, and I'm proud of that. Then the other takeaway that there were a lot, but that I got from the conference was make sure that you're not putting up barriers, that you're keeping communication open. And don't be afraid to be curious and think about how to solve these problems, which I think happened in our discussion today, which made me go back this afternoon in the brief little bit of time I had and reread that scholarship and say, well, there's some open holes here that they haven't stated. And it was that prompting to be curious and to look at that. So think about one statement that they made there today too. And it's so fun to be all together with people from all over the state. Because somebody will say to you, what are you? And you're a teacher, but that looks way different. Comparing what your position is, it looks really different. But it said, make sure that when you're rolling things out, that you don't do it to them, but you do it with them. That's another real powerful statement, I think, if you analyze how we apply that.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Pedersen.
I went last year as a volunteer and helped check in participants to the Show Up for Teachers activity. This year I didn't have that opportunity or didn't take that opportunity. But the fun thing is being able to see people who have impacted you throughout your life, different coworkers, different people who've gone to other conventions, and being able to see them again and then compare notes and then learn from their experiences and then sharing yours. That was really fun because I was there this morning for a bit. And even then I was able to meet with a couple of people that I hadn't seen in quite a while. And it was quite enjoyable. Following that, I went up to the Sandy Amphitheater splash pad because it was principals and popsicles for Silver Mesa. This was their third time holding it. Amy Wagner's the new principal, and she has Angela Oviet as her assistant principal. And they have been trying very hard to get to know their community and give them opportunities. And so they had 3 different opportunities for people to come. And I was up there when they were meeting with the kids, and they had a really good turnout. You'd think it's middle of July, people are busy, although it does help being next to splash pad. I don't think that hurt anything. She's done it in different locations. This was the first time there. But what I enjoyed about it is, again, being able to talk to parents that were coming up to meet the principal and have them ask questions as well. And I actually was pleased to have a couple of them mention how happy they were and excited they were that we had allowed Silver Mesa to have an assistant principal. They were just tickled about the difference that that can make, because it just spreads the access to our teachers and to our students for our principals. But I wanted to shout out for Silver Mesa and for going that extra mile. And that's just one example of what many of our principals do. This isn't when they normally have to engage with their community or with their students, but I really shout out positively for this kind of activity, and it was fun to be there. I also enjoyed participating in the parade, even though they didn't take my picture. I don't know. It was fun to be in the Sandy Parade, the enthusiasm, and then meeting the people along the sidelines. I guess that's why my picture doesn't get taken, is that I get dragged into conversations or comments because the parents are sitting a couple of rows behind the kids, and the kids have their bags out and it's full of candy. So I can't resist doing this, but I should give the candy to the row behind. And then I end up engaging with the parents. I'm talking, I'm not just throwing. And so then I get behind the bus and then they can't get my picture. So that's my fault. But it was a fun activity. I enjoy engaging with our community, and Sandy City does a fine job of supporting our district. It was fun to have 2 school buses there and Alta High School's marching band. That was just really fun. And then lastly, I also want to say thank you to Catherine. I've actually had the benefit of eating her meals for longer than when I've been on the board. For the 4 years that I was a vice president of CEA, I would come to board meetings and I would always be in the study sessions. So the board always invited me to eat. So I've been a recipient of Catherine's great menus and her happy personality. She cares about people so deeply, and you can tell through everything she does. So we are going to miss her happy, smiling face. We're going to miss her wonderful food. She promises she'll come back, and I'm going to hold her to that she'll stop by and still be part of our district, because she's part of family. So enjoy the rest of your summer in July, and then we'll see you next month.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Tingy.
Oh, thank you. I just want to add my appreciation to Catherine Meyer for all that she's done for the district over the years. And as I've thought about what she's been able to do, she's actually made thousands of lives better, and not just because of her food. But I was thinking, one of the reasons her meals were so delicious is she's got a secret sauce. And that secret sauce is selflessness, joy, service, happiness, friendship, and love. And you can really tell, as many of us have already said, that it permeates every aspect of her life as well as every recipe. So I just want to thank her for her many years of service and her significant contributions to Canyons District. It's one of the beautiful things about our district is it was created by our community, and our community is served by the district as well as serves within the district. And I really appreciate that. And she's an excellent example of what Canyons District is all about. That's all.
Okay, thank you. I just want to add that I really appreciate Catherine, and I truly believe that her providing us those meals was an act of service and love. She was not doing that for the money. So anyway, we are going to miss her, and I do recognize that she is a very special person, and I appreciate her so much. And I really do hope that she comes back to visit once in a while. So, and then also I just want to give a shout out to Mason Frey, who was Mr. Lacrosse. My son has been friends with him since middle school, and he is not only a great lacrosse player, but just a great all-around kid. He's very kind. He's very generous. Anyway, he's a great kid, and I want to congratulate him and wish him the best with his lacrosse career. So And yay, it's before 8 o'clock, and I will now call the meeting to a close. Thank you.